right, today we're finally gonna talk about this thing, the DJI Mini 3 Pro. And I know my title's controversial, but I'll get into that later. But a drone has been a staple in the filmmaking industry for really not so long, to be completely honest. Back in the day, the way you were able to get aerial shots were only on high budget productions. I mean, if you remember, the way it was done was with a helicopter. But as technology has gotten better and more advanced, a drone has become something that we've seen from the amateur level to the pro level. There's been one brand in particular that has really revolutionized and monopolized kind of the industry of filmmaking. And now we see, no matter what the budget is, you're able to get an aerial shot. The beauty of an aerial shot is the endless creativity. No matter how you're gonna tell your story, the fact that you can do it from the air now and really anyone has their hands on this piece of tech and they're able to mix it into their filmmaking kit is really something that has been beneficial over the past years. This thing has become a household name. So yeah, I purchased not one, but two DJI Mini 3 Pros. And the reasoning for that is I crashed the first one within 3 days. I lost it up in some trees, following my car around the block. I had 3 successful flights, and then the fourth one it was gone. So I had to buy a new one. And that drops me into kind of my first 2 tips right off the bat. The first is get DJI Care. I did not have it and had to buy a whole new drone, and that sucked. So get DJI Care because there are a few accidentals and you're covered. The next is get a controller with the screen built in. I, previous to this, had the Mavic Pro. This is the first Mavic. This is the first one they made. I got this thing the day it came out. This has been through it all. And you had to use a phone. You had to use a phone to connect, and that sucked. And the amount of times my phone was almost dead. I would be getting a call, a million texts, notifications. Keep the phone in the pocket, get one of these, it's worth the extra money. I will promise you that right now. All right, so I had a choice. When I got this drone, I had a choice of which drone I wanted because as we know, DJI has so many options. It's so many different price tags and so many different kind of needs. For me, it came down to, did I want a regular cinematic drone or did I want an FPV drone? And I've flown the DJI FPV and it is so fun to fly. But one thing I ran into is the fact that I do a lot of this storytelling on my own, just me. And the fact that you can fly this with one person and have no issues, because flying a drone is a very responsible thing. You do have to be extremely responsible. The fact that you can do this with one person and with anything FPV, you kind of need a spotter because you're in the goggles and you're in your POV first person mode the entire time really was the reason I went this route. Now don't get me wrong, the FPV is extremely fun, and if I had someone with me at all hours of the day that could basically be my eyes in the air, I would have got the FPV in a heartbeat because it is so fun to fly, and every time you take it out, it's just a fun piece of tech, and especially with what the Avata has to offer now and the size that is. No brainer. But then from there, I went the cinematic route and I had to choose Mini 3 Pro, Air 2S, or Mavic. And I went Mini 3 Pro because, I mean, look how small this thing is. It does almost everything the Air 2S does, but it fits in my hand. I throw this thing into my fanny pack. I've thrown this thing into my pocket, into my crossbody. I can really take it anywhere I want with me. And the fact that the drone is smaller than the controller is really showing the strides that DJI has made over the years with their drone. So the weight and size of this thing, this is where it's really the most impressive. This thing is 249 grams, and anything under 250 grams, you do not have to register with the FAA. I mean, I myself have a Part 107 license that I study for, passed, all those things, so I can fly really at any weight and get paid for it. But the fact that you can get this thing at 249 grams and you don't have to register it makes it really seamless for anyone to fly, and anyone who wants to get into it with a good quality drone is able to do so with this. Now, this gives you about 35 to 38 minutes, give or take, battery with this battery that comes with it. But you can upgrade the battery. You can get a little bit bigger of a battery that gives you about 47 minutes of flight time. But keep in mind, if you do that, it'll take your weight from 249 grams and bump it above. So you'll have to register this with the FAA. So So keep that in mind when you're deciding kind of flight time and those things you want. The next is image quality. Something that's really cool about this drone in particular is it does horizontal, but also vertical video. So you can get true vertical video with this thing. This thing does 4K up to 60. So you have 4K in your 24 frames, 30 frames, 60 frames per second. You're able to do that. And it has 120 FPS in 1080p. So you're able to get that high frame rate in a real slow motion, but it is at 1080. So keep that in mind. And then when you drop this thing over to the photo mode, you're able to shoot RAW and JPEG, and it's a 48 megapixel camera. So it is a good camera. And then the other thing is you're able to do D-Cine-like. So you're not able to get a complete D-Log where you can completely color it and have the freedom you kind of have with the FX3 and stuff, but you're able to still color and still take that grayscale and pull out as much information as you think you might need with the footage coming in. And what DJI does real well is their stabilization and their modes. And this is where basically any other company that has come into play has not been able to keep up. The stabilization on this thing is absolutely great. At the weight it's at, it is able to withstand the wind pretty well. And I'm gonna get into some reasons why it has not really worked for me with a few modes I've jumped into in a little bit. But overall, at the weight and size this is at, it handles the wind extremely well. I've not been able to put it into some real high wind scenarios yet, but I've been able to fly in a little bit of wind, and it handles it. It gets the footage to me, it stabilizes it. But what this thing is real good at is the focus tracking. You can lock onto a subject, a person, a car, whatever it may be, and as you move the drone, the gimbal will move with you, and it'll follow you, and it stays locked on, and it is really good. But that jumps into kind of the next thing I want to talk about. This has tri-directional obstacle avoidance. So what that means is there's a front sensor, a down sensor, and a back sensor. So as you're going forward, you're going back, and you're going down, it'll avoid things and it'll just move around it. And that's what the new technology does, is it moves around it pretty smoothly. But where it gets tricky is when you're doing the follow me modes and it gives you a warning and you're flying this thing sideways, there's no sensors on the side. And that's how I crashed my first one, is I had it following my car and it clipped a tree that was a lot higher than I originally anticipated when I was going around the block and turning corners. So keep in mind, as there are sensors, be completely aware of where you're flying this thing and how you're flying this thing, because it is so easy to clip a tree. Now this thing does have digital zoom, you can zoom in, but one thing is when you zoom in, you do lose a lot of the quality of your image, and you do notice it. And a mode that I was really excited for was hyperlapse mode. And hyperlapse mode works extremely well if there is zero wind. The little time you get a little bit of wind with this thing doing hyperlapse mode, and it is going even a little bit left or right or up or down or something, you see it in the hyperlapse. It's just as simple as it is. That's how hyperlapses work. That's why you need a tripod. That's why putting this thing in the air and trusting the stabilization, you're only gonna get the perfect hyperlapse if it is the perfect day out and there is zero wind. And then finally, it has the master shots. This is again where DJI kind of dominates everyone, is these master shots. You're able to have it locked on your face and zoom all the way out. You're able to have it orbit you. You're able to have the drone do all these things at the touch of one button. And that's really where DJI is a hardware company, but they're also a software company first. It's kind of like Apple, it's kind of like Tesla. They do very good with the hardware, but their software is just above and beyond next level. Does adding this to my filmmaking kit make a difference? And in my opinion, yes. One thing I've learned with this drone compared to using this drone, when I was in the phases of creating with this drone, I would just put the drone up in the air to get an aerial shot, to make sure I had aerial shots in my footage. With this, the only time this goes up in the air is if it is a planned aerial shot that I've storyboarded out that I know I need to tell the story. And that's something that's been really fun. You don't feel obligated to put it up in the air, and you find yourself putting it up when you need a reason. So for me, this lives in my filmmaking kit every single day, and it lives with me on almost all of my shoots because it gives a nice perspective to be able to tell the story from the air and just be able to have this option so easily. It's such a small footprint. But the brutal and honest truth, and this goes back to the title of this, How I Made a Mistake. I wish I shelled out the money for a Mavic. If it's the new one with the 3 cameras or the one with the Hasselblad camera, I wish I did. I notice a lot of times the image quality in this doesn't add up to what I want. And One thing is you can't control the aperture on this thing. So you're locked in at whatever this aperture is. You're locked in at that. So you can't control that. And then the other thing is you can't bump your ISO up that high or you notice the grain, and it is extremely noticeable. With the Mavic, you're able to shoot in higher ISOs, you're able to control the aperture, and it's just a better camera. It's a better sensor, and the resolution comes in a lot nicer, and it matches my cinema camera a lot more. As much as I love this drone, and it's in my filmmaking kit, it's in my storytelling kit every single day, and I do love it, I'm not getting rid of this by any means, I do wish I shelled out the money for the better drone, so down the road, the image quality doesn't become something that I'm starting to get bothered by, or it's starting to be noticeable within my videos. But overall, I love this drone. I can't wait to see what I can and can't do with this thing and really put it to the test and really see how I can use it in the way I tell stories. But with that, that's my review on the DJI Mini 3 Pro. Comment down below what drone you have, if you think I should get a Mavic and try it out, and also if you like my new backdrop. I'm trying out something new. But with that, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. And with your guys' help, we can get there. And the support means everything. And until the next one, peace.